is that with Reiki, you don't use your own energy. You're tapping into the universal life force energy. The energy of that person stayed in my room. The world went silent for a second. Like, I didn't hear anything. It's almost like you go deaf for a second. People do wear some form of masks before you get into their energy. They can be very bubbly. They can be in a good mood, and you get into their energy, and that's not what the energy is, because that's a mask they're wearing, to the public. Okay, so the alien story is interesting because I think me and you are going to have a different idea of it.
Ultra minds, ultra minds, ultra minds, ultra JK, ultra. Ultra minds, ultra minds, ultra minds, ultra JK, ultra.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Ultra Minds. So this week I have a very special guest. This is my favorite energy healer and someone I've known since the day I was born. My sister, Jessica Carmody, who is the self-care librarian and a Reiki master.
Hi.
So I'm really excited to talk about a lot of things with you today. We're going to talk a little bit about our upbringing in some parts of like the magical aspects, how we were always introduced to this type of magic, spells, spirituality at a very young age. And then also, everybody knows that I had an alien experience, and we have a witness of this experience who
I was there.
So we are going to give a little bit of information about that. But first, I do want to talk about, where you're at right now, which is you are a Reiki master. And so one thing that's really interesting about the type of Reiki that you do is it's a little different than the type of Reiki that most other Reiki masters are using. And that's, can you explain kind of what makes it different than what most of the other Reiki masters are doing at this time?
Yeah, so when I learned Reiki in 2021, I was led to Reiki from someone that you actually knew, and that they were attuned from this person. So I went to the same teacher, and a lot of times when people get into Reiki, they don't understand what Reiki they're learning or anything about Reiki. They're just called to it, I was just called to learn. She taught me Reiki, and I thought like I was doing the Reiki that everybody was doing, that I had saw online, or that I had Reiki sessions with Reiki masters too. I thought I was doing the same type. And then some people would message me on social media and they would say, what type of Reiki are you doing? And I'm like, the one everybody else is doing. And I had done some research and realized that the most popular Reiki that we see online is called Holy Fire Reiki. That is the Reiki that most people are attuned to. I was attuned to Tibetan Reiki, which is slightly different. So the difference is Holy Fire Reiki and Tibetan Reiki, they use the same symbols that they use the Usui symbols, but once you get to the master level, that's when the symbols change. So Holy Fire master symbols are going to be different than the Tibetan symbols. So I'm using master symbols from the Tibetan history versus the Holy Fire. Now, when I did some more research, I had realized that the Tibetan Reiki actually had been phased out in the 80s. So it was a popular form of Reiki, like up until I guess like mid 80s. And then it switched over to the Holy Fire later. There's also Karuna Reiki that you see that's popular too. And that's in there as well. So there's lots of different types of Reiki, but I would say the most popular one is Holy Fire. I do Tibetan Reiki. Some of the symbols will be the same. So a lot of times when I do talk to other Reiki masters, we'll have some similarities, but it won't be the same exact symbols.
And so, yeah, I also know a bit about, because of the person that had introduced you to the Reiki, which we could just say it's my ex-boyfriend, because we won't get into your personal story about how you got into it, and it's kind of a significant aspect of the story. But also, so it's kind of like, because those teachers were older and they had already been practicing by the time that these new Reikis started to be formed. And, I know a little bit about the lineage too, is that it's a very short lineage that you have to the original master, right?
Yeah, so a lot of people that you're seeing now are probably going to be like 10th to 14th generation. That's like the average that I would see that it ranges. And exactly like my lineage specifically, the people who had been practicing for so many years that they just kept passing down the Tibetan lineage. They didn't learn the Holy Fire one, even though it was more popular. So sometimes it can be the age of the person, depending on what they're teaching. Again, the person that I learned from, like, she's not on social media. She's like living in the middle of the mountains. It's like she's not really up on the times of everything that's going on. So she's not going to see like the newer stuff that you're going to see on social media. So the lineage that she had already been attuned to, it was going to be a little bit of the older lineage. So that's how I got into, the Tibetan one.
And so one thing that I really love about the Reiki teacher that you learned from was she really emphasized a lot of unconventional ways to use Reiki. So most people think that Reiki is only energy healing on the body, on the person for their own chakra alignment or for healing. And I love that she taught you all of these unconventional ways, which is probably the ways that you use it most commonly when your day-to-day life. And you send me Reiki all the time for everything. And it's not usually like you're doing my body. It's like if I'm taking a flight, if I'm going somewhere, if I have a meeting. So, some of those examples, I know it's sometimes it could be for something with luck towards something. It could be one time you sent it when I was working in a restaurant and it was just pure chaos that day.
I remember.
It literally was everybody was off the rails. It was a nightmare. And I was like, can you please just send Reiki to this location? And I remember about an hour later, everyone was zenned out. The customers were so nice. And everyone was like, what happened in here? We did not make a lot of money. I have to say, we did not make a lot of money.
We're too chill.
Too chill. The customers were too chill. They weren't drinking hard enough. But so I know you can send it to things, places, but also another thing that she had taught you to do was also sending it throughout time. So you could send it to a past event or a future event. And that is so that's one of the things that you offer too. And I feel like people don't kind of understand how to use Reiki in that way, where they, instead of doing an actual session, they could just book for you to send it to something. They could send it to their birth. They could send it to their childhood. They could send it to an event that happened in their childhood. They could send it to, something in the future. If, just on the topic of birth, say if they're giving birth, send it to their due date or send it to
I had somebody, so I used to do a lot of lives, which lives are interesting because I'm sending Reiki to the collective, not to an individual person. And I remember I was on live and someone said, "Oh, I'm back. When I was pregnant, I was watching your Reiki live when I was literally in the hospital. And it was such a pleasant experience because I was watching your Reiki live. And it's like, I wouldn't have even known that because I'm just sending it out to whoever's watching the live, but they're taking it in on a personal level, on an individual level. And then they give me this feedback of what happens later. So, it could be used in so many ways. And I often think that people don't really understand Reiki. And that's probably why they think it's on the simplest level, just going through the energy of your body and balancing the energy. That's what people really think it is. But it's such a powerful tool that can be used in so many different ways. But I just don't think a lot of people know that.
And so, can you talk about kind of what is the difference between Reiki and energy healing? Because people kind of use the terms interchangeably, but they're actually not.
Yeah, I think it's a popular subject right now because the last couple of years, Reiki's getting a lot of exposure. I went to a doctor's appointment and it was like, "Oh, do you want to make an appointment with a nurse, a doctor, or a Reiki practitioner?" And I'm like, that's not my gynecologist. I'm like, so it is getting a lot of exposure lately. Crystal stores are holding Reiki events, even I saw a hair salon, having a Reiki after the, a yoga and Reiki together, sound healing and Reiki. So it's a lot of people now are just combining it in all different aspects. So it is getting a lot of exposure, and I don't know if it's fully understood. Like I said, there's lots of different types of Reikis. There's also something called angelic Reiki, which I don't know a lot about because it's not something I practice, but that's even now we're going into different types of Reiki that may not even be the lineage from Japan to, people are expanding on the Reiki as well. I would say the biggest difference between energy healing and Reiki is that with Reiki, you don't use your own energy. You're tapping into the universal life force energy and you're sending that. So if you are a Reiki master and you're sending Reiki, you shouldn't be exhausted after the session. Now, you may be tired if you're talking to the person for an hour, like you could be tired from that. But technically, you're really not going to get tired from giving Reiki because you're not using your own energy. I came up with this method that I teach in my courses when people learn Reiki from me, is like thinking about opening the book. And you're accessing the energy from the book for the person. You could take it off the bookshelf and access the energy that way. Because what I have noticed is when I teach people Reiki and then I say, okay, give it to me, let's practice. They're like, oh, out of breath for a second. I'm like, you shouldn't be out of breath. But it's because they're taking everything inside them and forcing it out. And that's not how Reiki is. I do think when it comes to energy healing, and we're not just talking about Reiki, other forms of energy healing, some people do it from their own energy. They may channel an angel. They may just have intuitive Reiki, or intuitive energy healing. So I think now there's lots of different types of Reiki. There's also lots of different types of energy healing. But I would say the biggest difference is with Reiki, especially the Usui Reiki, Holy Fire, Tibetan Reiki, you're using Japanese symbols. These are symbols that are passed down to you when you're attuned through the lineage, and you're using universal life force energy, not your own. A lot of energy healing, they're not using symbols. They could be channeling angels, they could be challenging their guides, channeling the guides. So I would say that's the biggest difference. You're not using your own energy.
Mm-hmm. And I think, that's what makes it a bit safer for the person doing it, because, a lot of times, especially because it's a tradition that is like tried and true versus, there's many people who do energy work who haven't been trained at all, but a lot of times they could potentially kind of be opening themselves up too much to people's energy and then not being able to disconnect from it after. Whereas like with Reiki, there's steps to take to then disconnect from the person's energy and not be energetically entwined after.
Yeah, and it's also about energetic hygiene that a lot of people don't do. But you know what? If you don't do it, you'll learn your lesson early on. That's what happened to me. I wasn't really taught energetic hygiene from my teacher. I think she was a very positive person. It's like love and light. So she didn't necessarily talk about the negative side of energy. So when I started doing Reiki on your ex-boyfriend, who actually was the one who got me into this. Afterwards, the energy was so I was scared for a second because I wasn't cleaning my hands after, I wasn't taking a shower after, I wasn't closing my space up after, and the energy of that person stayed in my room. It stayed in my area. So that can happen. So it can happen with Reiki too if you're not exercising the energetic hygiene.
Right. And so kind of connected to that topic, what happened with that? And it also happened one time through a video for you, I remember. So there is, and not to, fearmonger about things like negative attachments or things like that, but there are energies that are heavy that are in people's auras, whether we think that they're outside of ourselves or a part of ourselves that is unhealed or some baggage that we're carrying. So, what do you do in those situations? Because sometimes when you're clearing, even one time someone did Reiki on me, a friend had done it on me. And she said that when she went over my solar plexus, something came out and stood next to her and watched over the rest of it. And she was like, it was like a very a scary presence, and she shooed it away and it was fine. But so what about those type of things? Because that's obviously comes into the field of energy work, is energies that are sometimes heavy or negative or dense.
Yeah, so when I did it that time that it was stuck in my house, that particular person was struggling with some type of addiction, right? So a lot of times if you are dealing with someone with active addiction, you're going to feel that in the Reiki. So I would say there are certain situations that are more sensitive, which that's one of them. After that happened, I talked to my Reiki teacher. I called her and I was like, listen, I think I have an attachment. I thought I had an attachment. And she was like, no, you don't have an attachment. She was like, but what's happening is you're not clearing your space before and after. And she's like, it's important to understand duality. If you don't understand duality, you can't really successfully do energy work, because you have to understand the light and the dark, and that everybody can have both of those in their energy. And when you're going into someone's energy, you don't know that, right? Because you're looking at the person. You don't know what energy you're getting into. And people do wear some form of masks before you get into their energy. They can be very bubbly. They can be in a good mood, and you get into their energy, and that's not what the energy is, because that's a mask they're wearing, to the public.
Right.
So it really is about duality, is understanding that when you get into someone's energy, there's going to be light and dark. There's going to be heavy energy. There may be lighter energy in there. And the first thing is, you can't get scared. If you get scared, you're just going to like fumble everything, and you're going to get nervous, and you're going to think you get attachments, right? You have to understand that first, you can ask for permission to go in. So before I do a Reiki session, I will say a prayer, like a Reiki prayer, and say like, please guide me through this. Have my spirit guides protect me. Let their spirit guides come through and protect them. If there's any angels that want to come in and protect them, please do so now. So I am asking for permission to go in at first. So that's a little bit of protection for both sides, that our energies don't mingle and mix, that they do stay separated, right? So I am creating like a healthy environment before I even go into the Reiki session. So it's definitely about not getting scared, understanding duality, and then also cleansing after, which is, I always use a selenite wand after to clean my hands, clean my space. I could open a window, clear it out with that. And then there's a cleansing symbol in Reiki. So I put that over the house, over my space. And it is good practice before you get into a Reiki session to put that cleansing symbol on your body as well before you go in. So there's lots of things like that you can do, but if you just jump into giving a Reiki session on someone and don't do any hygiene, or, not manage your thoughts around it, it can get scary for some people.
Right. And I think also too, the consent stuff is really interesting, because I think a lot of times when people have been attuned to it, or have the gift for energy work or things like that, sometimes they feel inclined to do it if somebody is suffering. If, like someone that I knew that had done Reiki, there was some people that were like fighting outside, and they wanted to send them Reiki. And I'm like, well, is that the right thing to do? Like, is it your place to do something that you haven't been asked to do in the energetic space? So like, what do you think about stuff like that? Like, giving Reiki out with consent, or, to specific people, whether they're asking or not? Like, what do you think is like, is it a little bit like certain situations, case by case?
It's case by case, because it's hard to explain, but there's two ways to go into someone's energy. One is going to be to actually go into feeling every aspect of their body. I will never do that without consent, because to me, I'm learning personal things about them without their consent. But if you're just sending Reiki for the best outcome for things around you, I don't really think you need consent for that, because you're just sending love and light. You're not learning anything about somebody, right? If there's two people fighting outside and I just send Reiki to calm the situation down, I don't know anything about either of those people personal, right? I'm just sending energy to the space. So I do think it's fine to do that. I take public transportation when I go to work. If things are getting a little rowdy in the bus terminal, I'm going to send Reiki to be like, let's just calm this down here. Again, I'm not feeling this person's inner energy, so I don't know what's going on. I'm just sending it to the situation. And that's what you brought up in the beginning, is most time people ask for Reiki for their body, but situational Reiki is really helpful, that you can send it to anything.
What are some of the situations that you use it for, or some of those other things that come up that maybe people aren't thinking to use Reiki for?
I use Reiki the most for doctor's appointments, for, getting the doctor that can diagnose me in the way that I need, to get my insurance to cover medication or doctor's appointments. Flights are the best, especially right now. We're having a lot of issues with airplanes, right? So you can ask anybody who does Reiki to send you good luck for your flight. That's the best situation because Reiki is really good for the future as well. So even if you have a flight a week from now, you can send Reiki to it. I send Reiki for you a lot for situations, safe driving if someone's going on a road trip.
Yeah, you send it to my car, like my
Oh
tires.
yeah, to your car. Oh, the tires. Yeah, for safety, like safety for travel is really good. Doctor's appointments.
Recently when you did it for my flight, I was literally within seconds of getting on the flight. And I get there just in the nick of time. And then
10 minutes. You were there like 10 minutes before you were leaving.
yeah, not 10 minutes before boarding, 10 minutes before the door closed. And so I get in and I actually got right in at my group, which my group was earlier. So then I got to go in early, even though I was like the last one there. And I was like, oh, this is great. And I sit down and then I was like, damn, the Reiki was so good that now we're holding the plane. And an hour had passed before the plane left, and they actually kept the door open and they allowed a passenger to come on an hour later. So it delayed the flight an hour. But then I was like, damn, the Reiki was so good that whoever that person was, it wasn't just
The Reiki sent to them. They needed it.
It was for the flight. So whoever was running an hour late, they allowed them. And I've never seen them allow someone on the plane last minute like that. And I was like, damn, like that Reiki worked on this person. Who knows what their situation was? And they got on the plane. So instead of me being like annoyed that it was delayed, I was like, listen, I'm glad that I got here on time. And then look at this person who the Reiki was for the whole flight. It was for everybody.
Well, the thing with Reiki, and this is what I teach, is it's about intention. So whatever you're doing with Reiki, it's always about some type of intention, and it's always positive intention, right? So I'm sending positive intentions to that flight. And that could have been for that person then, that they needed it. Maybe they had something really important that they had to get to.
Yeah. Or who knows, it could have been anything, so, and what about some other things? So also you and I have done Reiki for the past as well. So when in August, I did ayahuasca in Peru, and ayahuasca told me to make amends with our father. And so I'm the only one in the family that doesn't speak to him. And so it had been 20 years. And so I was like, okay, Mother Aya, I'm going to go to New Jersey right now. I'm going to go and do this. And so I didn't have like much of a plan. We decided to I think what he would consider an ambush.
Yeah. I told him, I'm just going to come see you, but I didn't say you were coming. I told my dad that, so when I told him, okay, come to our brother's house, I'm going to be there to visit. And he lives about 2 hours from me. So it's not like really, like, it's not unheard of that I would show up. And when he got there, I was like, Jenn's inside. And he sped out of there.
Yeah, he sped out of there so fast and almost caused an accident.
Like Maury Povich, like, when people are like, are you the father? And they run off stage. That was how he sped out of there. He like reversed out that my hands were over the window of the car because I was like trying to be like, oh, Jenn's in here, trying to be nice and soft. And he almost got my toes. As he reversed, he almost took my feet with him.
So, although that part of the healing was not as Mother Aya had showed me it would be, you actually had a really good idea before I got there. So you actually used Reiki, not necessarily towards that specific situation, but to heal all these different parts of the lineage. So one thing that you did was you got different crystals that represent different things. Yeah. So explain it, what we did.
So I used little small crystals, like, little tumble stones that represent something. So it could have been amethyst because I want to put peace in a situation. Selenite to cleanse the situations. For example, I use selenite at the home that we grew up in. Just cleanse a lot of the past. So I sent Reiki to each one of the things, which was really funny. The first one we stopped at was our family home growing up, which there's a lot of trauma there.
Right.
And I said, okay, that was the selenite. I'm like, okay, Jenn, here, go out and put it in the bush by the house. I had already sent Reiki to it. And Jenn's whole arm.
this is in like an urban area too. So it's not like these people that are living in these places now. This is in Jersey City and Hoboken in New Jersey. So it's like, these are not like people have a lawn. Like there's not a
Yeah.
great place to leave a crystal, and like everybody has a Ring camera. So I'm like getting out of a car and like casually walking by and then trying to sneak a crystal onto their property. And the first stop, yes, was the house that we grew up in. And it was a selenite that had 7 other small crystals,
Yeah.
crystals on it. And it was wrapped in copper. And so, because that is really like the origin of everything, that's why like
Yeah.
it needed like super cleansing and full body. And everybody, it was also for everybody who had ever been in that house, you know, not just for us, but for our siblings and parents, grandparents, like everybody who had been connected to that house. And so the first one, I go and I try to put it in a bush, and it gashes my arm open.
It kept you, it was clutching you. It didn't want to let you go.
It's just like, just one last wound.
You were like bleeding the gash of the arm.
I'm like, okay, now we have to go to the other 7 locations. I've been bloodied.
One last trauma on the way out.
Yeah. And then so we also did the house that then was our dad's house, which
Where we had the alien experience.
which is where the alien experience was. So we'll talk about the alien experience. We also left things at both of our grandmother's houses, and also our stepmom's house, the house that she was in when everything happened and went down when we were children. And then also we did our brother's house, which was where the showdown happened.
Yeah, the showdown.
The ambush. And then we did also our dad's old house. And probably the most interesting was we did the hospital that we were all born
Oh,
in.
I forgot about that. Okay, because okay, we have lots of different family members, right? There's me, Jen. We have an older sister, 2 stepsisters, and a brother. But all 3 of us, me, Jen, and our older sister, we were born at the same hospital. We're from the same parents, our mom and dad together. So at that location, we went and set a crystal, because that's really like the beginning of all this. And that's what we wanted to clear out. Like just this lineage of just so much trauma and drama, you know, and trying to leave some of that drama behind.
And so like, it's interesting, putting the Reiki into an item and then putting the item somewhere is like a nice unconventional way to use it. And also, as Jess was driving and I was like, okay, I would get out and like walk by and then like casually like get into this person's like property and put something on there. And you would do Reiki in the car while I was doing that. So we were getting it. I was planting the item that had already had Reiki, and then you would send like a final Reiki to really like close out these chapters and all the stuff that happened to everybody connected to this stuff.
Yeah, and that's I don't really see a lot of people use Reiki on items. So you can like you can put Reiki in a painting, you could put Reiki in a candle, you know, because Reiki is about intention. So you're setting intention into an item, so it can really be used for anything.
Right. And the deck that you have too, do you have it?
Yeah.
The Reiki deck. The Reiki deck, that's like a deck that is
It's called Reiki Divine Healing Deck. You can order, I think you can order on Amazon, Reiki Divine Healing. So I've received this as a gift from someone that we know. And there's Reiki inside the cards. And that's the concept that we're talking about, which can be in an item, is you can have Reiki in a tarot deck, an oracle deck, you know, as long as you're sending intent to an item and it doesn't wear off. You know, it's not like, okay, one-time use, because you're setting the intention for the item to hold it.
And what's interesting is something like an oracle deck like that is that they put the Reiki into the original image. So it's okay that it gets reprinted because the original image is what's holding the Reiki. It doesn't need to be put into the specific deck.
Yeah. And I often get the question, like, is Reiki the same online as it is in person? And that's the same concept as like why can you put in an item that doesn't make sense to some people, right? And I always tell people, because a lot of people, you know, they're hesitant to believe that you could do it online. I say, well, how did you find me? Through a Reiki video online? You felt the energy, right? You know, and I always tell people, if you like try a session with me, see if you believe it, you know, because it can be done in so many ways. I think we think Reiki has to be like on a massage table in person in a certain way, but Reiki is so powerful. It can be online, it could be in items, it could be through a picture. Like, sometimes I don't even have to talk to the person. They can send me their name and I could see their picture and send it through the picture too.
Mm-hmm. And, I think too, like other Reiki practitioners that I've talked to, some of them don't feel as confident with distance or online, and that also impacts it too. So, because you're very confident in what Reiki does and your ability to do it through distance, so I think that's another thing too, is also to see how each practitioner feels about it, because I do know some people that don't like to do remote sessions.
Well, it depends how you learn. So I was taught Reiki online. I did it through Zoom with my teacher, and I did it through it was a group learning. So there were several people on the Zoom, and we exchanged it between all of us. So I had a lot of exposure already that way. Like, I understood getting attuned through online, through giving it to people, and then like feedback. Like, I don't know who this person is. They're just in this group session. And then they say, oh, wait, are you having a pain in your elbow? Well, how would they know that if I didn't tell them? Right? So just my experience was my exposure to it online was always real. But there are a lot of people who learn Reiki in person, and then they don't really have maybe that online experience. But you can say the same thing for me. I teach online, and maybe people who learn it from me are not as comfortable with in-person Reiki.
Mm-hmm.
So it really depends how you learn and how you practice. That's really where you'll get comfortable.
Right. And so, can you tell us a little bit about your journey of how you ended up finding Reiki and becoming a Reiki practitioner?
Yeah. So in 2020, when the pandemic hit, so I have a history of anxiety and depression. And when the pandemic happened in 2020, it was at 100, my anxiety. And I was like, there was no one to come help me. People were being, in their houses, they weren't leaving. I didn't have a support system. Everybody else was losing their minds as well. So like, I couldn't say, oh, I have this anxiety. Can you comfort me? Everybody had their own anxiety. So I had a lot of anxiety and depression. At that time, I was taking like an anti-anxiety medication. I couldn't get it filled because it was a medication that you can't fill online. You have to see the doctor in person. No doctors were open. You couldn't go in person. It was telehealth. I was in the situation that I couldn't get my anxiety medication. So I said, you know what? I'm going to have to go the spiritual route here. Like, I was really felt like I was cornered into the spiritual route at that point. And I worked with somebody online. I had known her. She had a crystal store prior that I had shopped and got crystals from. And we did a couple of energy sessions. She wasn't a Reiki practitioner. She was an intuitive energy healer. And I worked with her for a couple of months, and I thought that she really helped with shadow work. But it wasn't healing physical aspects of the body. So I had done all this shadow work, but I was still having like pains in certain parts of my body, and I really needed that relief. So then you introduced me, remember Moses, who was the Reiki healer. And he didn't do online Reiki. He did in person, but he was in the situation with the pandemic that people weren't coming to him. So he FaceTimed me. He did Reiki on me, and all those pains were gone. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay, let me try out the Reiki part. This is really helpful. So then, your ex, he learned Reiki, and he would do it on me for practice through the phone. I wouldn't see him on Zoom. It was just like he would call me. And from him, it was very relaxing. So now I had all aspects. I was like, well, you can relax from Reiki. You can heal physical ailments from Reiki. Energy work can do shadow work, right? I'm exposing all myself to these different ways that you could use energy work. And I was like, you know what? Let me learn. Because why am I going to be paying someone, right, to do it on me all the time? And I can just do it on myself. So I learned Reiki, Reiki 1 and 2, and the master. I did it all in 6 months because I'm an Aries and do things aggressively sometimes. So I was like, let's just get it all done in 6 months. And I told my teacher, the only intention for this is for my own body, because I do have a lot of, I have chronic fatigue, chronic pain because I have fibromyalgia. And I was like, I really want to heal that through Reiki. And, that's what I did it for. And she said, don't put a limit on what you're going to do. Like, you're saying you only want to do Reiki on yourself, but let Reiki tell you what you're supposed to use it for. And I thought that was crazy, because why would I do Reiki on other people? Like, that was not something in my mind. And I went on TikTok and I made a Reiki video, and it went viral, and I got like 30,000 followers from it. And then I was like, oh, wait, people like me doing Reiki? And then people were like, oh, can I have a private session? Can you send Reiki for this? Can you teach me Reiki? And then it was like, oh, okay. Like, it was scary for me, because this wasn't the journey I had planned on. I didn't want to be a Reiki practitioner. I had a corporate job. I still have a corporate job. That was what my life was a corporate person. And then I was kind of thrown into the spiritual world. And I still do Reiki, for clients. It's not my full-time thing, but I do it. And I understand that it's a part of my calling. That even though I wanted to be very limited, that I just wanted to do it on myself, the universe had different plans for it. And a lot of people, get a lot of helpful insights from my Reiki sessions, So I think of it that way. Like, this is a little bit outside of what I thought it was going to be, but it's what I'm supposed to be doing too.
Right. And you're a very grounded person. So you're actually like a really good person in the Reiki space, because of your corporate experience and, also Western medical, you're a believer of both. So I think that that's another like good balance. And I think that's why someone like you is needed in the space, because, sometimes if people are fully towards the spiritual only, they might not be able to like connect in the way with someone who still needs like traditional medical help for things as well.
Yeah. And how I see it is, the people who come to me aren't the woo-woo people. Those aren't the people that come. The people who come to me are people who have corporate jobs, or, they're in transition. Like, they have a corporate job and then they want to, go do something in the spiritual world. They want to open up. I do. A lot of people who end up finding my Reiki are people who are new on their spiritual journey too. And I'm a safe place for them. And because I'm grounded, they feel comfortable with what I'm teaching. So, and I do think that in the spiritual realm, we need all different aspects of people. We need the grounded, and we need the people maybe who are not grounded too.
Right. Right. And, you have like basically, another thing too that's good about you is like, for those people, it's like you're not saying all of this stuff that is very out there. Like, a lot of times, like, there is some stuff that is a little unethical sometimes with energy work, where I hear these stories of people being so traumatized that they're like, oh, I can't be healed. I have attachments. Oh, it's something, I have a curse on me. I'm hexed, all of these things. And I feel like, there's a lot of unethical stuff that happens in these spaces with going through each person's filter as they're giving that information to the client. And so you're really good with, having boundaries with stuff like that, and not like fear mongering.
Yeah, because the point of Reiki, they're supposed to feel better after. I personally don't think it's my space to dig up all their trauma. I'm trying to help them with a goal that they tell me. Maybe the goal is to get a promotion at work. We're sending Reiki to that, to get a doctor to give them a prescription that they need. I'm going to send good luck for that. They have pain in their knee. I'm going to help them clear that pain. That's what I'm here for. Again, we have all these different people in the spiritual world, and they're all needed. I don't necessarily think that I should be doing the shadow work in my Reiki sessions, but there are people who are going to specialize in that, and maybe they'll have a different experience as well, right? So my calling is to make people feel better, not necessarily dig up their trauma in my sessions.
Mm-hmm. So, another thing is, with our upbringing and background, we were exposed to a lot of magic, hexes, dark magic, all different types of things like that at a young age. And I think that's why we have a little bit more discernment about certain things because, sometimes people, they don't think that there's anything to worry about in the spiritual spaces because it's like, oh, this is all, fine. And, one part of me doesn't believe in like evil, but then also I do believe that, just because, we did see
We've
a lot.
seen evil.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I would say if I would define it as evil, but we grew up with one of our grandmas who she was great to us, but don't piss her off, don't cross her because the hexes, the curses, the little names carved into things and rotting, it's
Yeah.
real.
Yeah. And okay, so when I got into the Reiki, and I think you're like this too, we do lean into the love and light stuff, right? And love and light gets a lot of criticism in the spiritual space because it's saying that you don't believe that there is dark or that there is duality. And that's not the truth. Like I've just said, my sessions are not about shadow work. I do lean into the love and light aspect, like light worker aspect, but I understand duality and understand that there is dark energy too. A part of that, like you had mentioned, our grandma did a lot of spell work. We've been exposed to a lot of spell work and we've seen the outcomes of her spell work. It's not like she was doing spell work and it didn't work. What she was doing, we saw the results on the people that she did it on. So we understand that it's not all love and light. Even if I choose to present that way on social media, I understand the duality that both can exist, right? So because I have that background with our grandma, I'm very careful with people's energy. I don't want to contribute to anything negative into someone's energy because I understand that it can happen too.
Right. And, I have been more love and light in the past, over the last couple years, especially with the ayahuasca, then I really was like, oh, like there's a reason why I've been propelled into this space that I'm in this spiritual space is because, you know, I do have a bunch of fucked up things from childhood and self-worth issues and these things that like are not presented in the love and light space. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of people that are coming here and they're like, doing their work, channeling their psychic messages, their stuff like that, talking to these other beings. And then other people are watching that and they're like, oh, I'm never going to be able to be like that. I'm just messed up. I wasn't loved as a kid. I wasn't this. I'm never going to be like that. So I also, like you said, is there space for everybody in these spiritual spaces and it's opening up more. And I feel like that's why it was easy for me to end up in this space and to be amongst like the great people and in all the spaces and in all the conferences and, having like a platform overnight. And I think it's because like, then there also does need the examples of someone like me who, yes, of course, I lean towards the light 100%. I believe that that's what's all working towards it. But then there also does need to be people who are like, yeah, and it's not pretty and it's not clean either. Like there's a lot of like gunk that is underneath that, needs to be cleared and addressed and like processed. And I think that collectively the spiritual space is starting to move in that direction, like a little bit more into the shadow.
And it's about finding the right practitioner for your journey too, because there are things like death doulas, right? There are people that can hold that space. Not everybody can hold that space, right? So it really is about finding whoever on your spiritual journey is for you and what space you need for them to hold. I tend to attract people that are going to just need the love and light stuff, right? But I believe in shadow work, right? I believe in those other aspects. So it's really about picking the person that fits best for you.
At the current time that you're
Yeah.
at. Because
Mhm.
there's teachers that I really enjoyed before who now I don't enjoy as much. And probably, the same for everybody else is that like we all have these spiritual teachers along our path, But, you know, everybody has to go to first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, high school, and then college, you know? So it's like the spiritual teachers are like that too. So, you know, there
Oh,
might be a
yeah.
point that you need a death doula. There might need a point that you need someone who works with crossing over, you know, like people who mediumship, you know, sometimes mediumship is very beautiful. Sometimes mediumship is very heavy. You know, sometimes you need someone that is really good at removing negative attachments or doing shamanic healing to do that soul retrieval work. Or sometimes you just need like to be lifted up. And that's what you need, is to be in that space. So it's like also honoring these different parts of your journey and not so much identifying with, because this is who I am, this is what I am. Like there definitely was a time that I did wear all white for a minute.
And it really is like not thinking you have to go to a one size fits all healer, right? Like, oh, they're going to heal me from everything. That's not the truth. You know, just like I mentioned, I had so many energy healers before I got to this point. They all helped me with different aspects of things that I needed them to help me with, you know. So you can have exposure to a lot of different healers in different ways that you're going to need at that specific time.
Right. And, you know, understanding too that like honoring each part of yourself along the way, because, you know, sometimes like I think another thing that happens with the spiritual space is that after somebody moves on and learns more than what that teacher was for in their life, they almost like become angry at that teacher, which is different. Like if you go to the second grade, you're not mad at your teacher from the first grade. But that happens in the spiritual space where people like they learn more information and they're like, that person is a fraud, is a this, is a that. And it's like, but that's what you needed at that point. Even if somebody is a fraud or a grifter or a scammer, that is also what you needed at that point.
I think it's about, you know, having gratefulness for whatever that part was. And I think that people forget that in the spiritual journey. Once someone gets a little bit higher in their healing journey, you know, because that's how they would refer it. Like, oh, but I'm more advanced now. And this person is like 101 spirituality. But you needed that 101. You know, and a part of 101 is discernment. And you're going to need a grifter on your journey, because I've got grifted. Okay. I've spent a lot of money on, and I believe in psychics, I believe in mediums, but I've spent a lot of money on psychics who's grifted me, you know, but that's fine. I'm not mad about that, because I needed to learn that. If I was not scammed a little bit, I would not be at the point that I could have my own intuition about things, because I had no intuition at that point, not to understand that this person was scamming me, or that I could answer my own questions instead of paying $200 a pop for 15 minutes, you know. Like now I'm at the point that I can understand my own intuition and I don't have to do all that. But everybody needs those things on their journey. You're not going to, you know, get to this point that people want to ascend and you've never been grifted.
Right.
You
And it
know,
is an essential part of it. And, you know, that for me was very difficult to like see a lot of the people that I looked up to, then to know them behind closed doors and to get to meet a lot of people. And now working in the space from once being a fan of these people, I'm like, oh my God, like this whole space that was a part of my own shadow work for me to see like, wow, a lot of these people are not who they claim to be, and that is an important part of the journey as well, because spirituality is within. And it's beautiful to have people help you along the way, little stepping stones here and there. But if you continue to always go to the teacher, go to the healer, go to the psychic, go to the channeler, go to these things for the answers, you keep not listening to what the answer is inside of you, which is the only really true answer.
yeah. And also, it's really just about, for me, it's really about, you know, fine tuning your own intuition. And that's going to happen. And also through the way, for me, you don't have to have hate for everything that happened, right? Like you can say like, I needed to learn this from this psychic or this medium, and that was the message. Okay, so the alien story is interesting because I think me and you are going to have a different idea of it.
Okay, want to hear your idea. They've heard my idea 100 times already.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, I've already said mine so many times.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to hear mine again.
The interesting aspect of the alien story here, right, is one, I have disassociated memory. That was something I've always had, right? You know, from trauma as a child. But for some reason, even though I have a disassociated memory, I can still distinctively see the backyard that this alien experience happened in. It was like imprinted in my brain in a very clear way. But I think you have a little bit of a different picture, because I think you have a better memory than me to begin with. So that's part of it. But for me, I'll tell my story because, oh, and this is the funny part. Even though like we've both had this experience, me and you don't talk about this often.
No.
Like, I don't even remember the last time we talked about this. It's not something we talk about.
No,
like,
this is probably like only the second time we've ever talked about it.
Yeah. So it's not like we prepared this. Like, I don't even watch the videos of what you talked about in the experience. So I wouldn't even know the details of what you would say. So for me, we were at, our dad lived in a house with our stepmom. So we were around our stepchildren, like the stepkids. We were all in the yard playing, and I don't understand why we were playing at night, because it wasn't the daytime. Like, so it was me, you, our older sister, our two stepsisters, and our brother. We were all in the yard. There possibly was someone else there, but I can't confirm. I thought it was our step cousin, but I can't even confirm that. I think there was somebody else there. So we're all in the yard, and there was like furniture, like, I don't know, like patio furniture, chairs, like just patio stuff. We were all, and now I'm thinking about it, I'm like, what were we even doing? We weren't even playing ball or something. I don't even know why we were all out there. And I remember a couple of us sitting on the couch in the chairs and like just looking around. And then I remember we saw a white dove. And we thought that was weird because I can't even remember. It felt like it was like 8 or 9 p.m. at night, and it was pitch black. So it didn't really make sense as this white dove. And then for me, the world went silent for a second. Like, I didn't hear anything. It's almost like you go deaf for a second. And then I heard like, it sounded like fireworks mixed with a thunderstorm. And then I saw a bunch of lights, and it was weird because it just showed up. It's not like I saw like a craft coming from the air and land. It was like I was sitting there, it went silent. I saw a white dove. I heard these weird noises, and then I saw lights. And then it felt like the thing zoomed away. And then I looked over, and there was our neighbor, which I don't even remember like ever talking to this guy. So it's not like I knew him like intimately or anything. He popped up, and he just was like looking at the same area that I was looking at, that all of us were looking at. And that's the end of my memory. I don't remember like getting scared or running in the house or anything like that. Like, my memory stops at the neighbor. And for me, because I had that experience that was so weird, and if you talk to any of us that were there, we all have a similar but a little bit different experience. But like, even our stepsisters, they weren't into alien stuff. And even like, if you ask them, they'll be like, oh yeah, that happened. So it was a situation that it was like so real that even if you don't believe in aliens, you're like, well, what the hell was that then? So even today, like, I'm not into aliens like Jenn's into aliens, but I'll never deny anybody's story. Because I'm like, well, if whatever happened that day happened to me, I believe people, because it made no sense that it happened to us, so it could happen to anybody.
Right. And you've said before in the past that like, because you are more of like a little bit more of like an evidence-based person, you'd like to see it. You're like, if you didn't have that experience, you'd probably still question if aliens are here or coming.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I say, like, I'm not someone to sit around in a room and talk aliens with people. Even though I do Reiki, like, I'm almost to the point of like overgrounded. Like, I'm not really into a lot of things. So I'm not going to sit there and talk aliens with people, but I believe it 100%. And I believe that they exist because of that experience. And you know what? I think a lot of the experiences that have happened in my childhood, particularly, is because I'm this way. That I don't think I would believe a lot of things if I didn't experience them myself. When it comes to like our grandmas doing spell work or understanding energies at a young age or the aliens, like if I didn't experience those things, I probably would be anti all the spiritual stuff. But because I had exposure to them, I just like, okay, I have to believe these things because there's evidence to me that they exist.
Right. And also there was a lot of like ghost stories in our family. Like you and I did not see ghosts. Probably, I shut that down because the house that we lived in was that house that got me at the end, which actually it's just the property. The house has been knocked down, thankfully.
Oh, it's just the property, exactly. It's not even the house.
It was just the property that scratched the shit out of me. But like that house, it was built in like the 1800s. It was super like creaky. It would be like friends would come over and be freaking out, and I'd be like, no, that's just the house settling. Don't worry, that's just the house settling.
I think like as I got older, I believed more in the ghost aspect of things. I think I was too scared in that house because I was like, damn, if I start believing in ghosts, they're going to show up in the bedroom.
Right. That place was so haunted, but I'm the same way. And I think that's why I have I can't feel ghosts really. Like maybe like if it's in like a very charged place, like if I go to like a super haunted place, I can feel that something is off, but I don't have the awareness to the dead. And I feel like that is because I turned it off growing up. But even our dad and a lot of people on his side of the family had all had ghost stories that they've seen. When people would pass, they would come and see them before leaving. He would see them in the house on the stairs, like, and he's not even someone who's like, would say that,
Exactly. Me and him are probably more similar in that aspect with the grounding of like, have to have evidence to really believe it. But with our family, there is a lot of evidence of things. I wasn't really into the ghost stuff so much when I was younger, but after I did Reiki, and this is something that maybe people don't know, your intuition gets more fine-tuned over the years, and you open yourself up more to the spirits. So for me, I think I've probably always had this, but I wasn't open to it. It was, talking to spirit guides and talking to various spirits. So our grandmas that we've talked about, one of them who did the spell work, that was our dad's mother. She talks to me all the time. And then we have another grandma, our mom's mom. She's a little bit more the love and light. And she talks to me all the time too. Now they come in different situations, but I talk to them on a regular basis, which I wasn't comfortable doing that prior to the Reiki. And now I've experienced things in the last couple of years that other people that I know that have passed away, like somebody that I was in a relationship with that passed away. I was in a relationship in college. He talks to me all the time now. And the reason why I know it's him is because he's referencing certain songs that we had listened to together, certain experiences, certain foods that we had eaten together. So I definitely think of Reiki opens us up to the reality that, spirits are living amongst us.
Right. And, I also, maybe one thing that we'll kind of close on is, when people first get attuned to Reiki, they kind of go through a detox and stuff happens in their life. And so, can you talk a little bit about that? And it's not anything negative, but it sometimes is difficult for some people.
So it's not something that Reiki practitioners talk about because it's not really something that you're going to see in these Reiki manuals. So it only happens to some people. So it almost feels like it's hearsay, but it's not. So my Reiki teacher said, after she attuned me, by the way, you may go through a 21-day detox. I'm like, what do you mean? And it's not like food. It's not like you're juicing. It's a spiritual detox that people who are not supposed to be in your life may not be in your life after that. Meaning maybe friends that were a little bit of this energy vampire energy, like maybe a job that you're not supposed to be at, you're not going to be out after, you're attuned. For me, again, she didn't really warn me that much. She just said this 21-day detox that within 21 days of getting attuned, you can feel very emotional. You may feel a little like your immune system is down, and things may disappear from your life. And for me, I was very emotional. So I would say for about 2 weeks, it's almost like you feel a little depressed. And then I was dating someone at that time that we had no problems in our relationship. We were together for a couple months. He just like fell in love with somebody else out of nowhere. I was like, "Oh, hey, is everything okay? You're acting a little distant." "Oh yeah, I just fell in love with this person." I was like, "Oh, I didn't know you were dating somebody else." Like it just came out of nowhere. So that was like my experience, that a person who wasn't supposed to be in my life was going to be removed in that 21 days. So from people that I've attuned, I would say nothing drastic like that has happened to them. It's mostly just them feeling a little bit down and tired and just, going through integrating the energy into their body.
So you do the attunements, you offer one-on-one sessions, which are body work. And if they want to work on something in their life, if it's situational, and then also you do just like situational stuff too. So like if somebody wants to just like, I think you call it like good luck Reiki, but it could be
Yeah.
for another time in your life, a location.
Mhm.
Like let's say you're going to be spending a week with your in-laws. You could send Reiki to their home so that when you get there, things are fine or running smoother. Or if you have travel coming up, if you have a flight coming up, if you want to, maybe protect, it's overall good intention. So it could be also to have safe travels. It could be to, heal or not get sick or,
Yeah.
different things like that. So that I think on your site is what called Good Luck Reiki.
Yeah, right now I just have one session, which is an hour of Reiki. And how I do it is we go over the energy in your body. So if you have any ailments like knee pain, we'll fix that. I'll give you feedback about the energy, whatever's happening in your body, if I get any intuitive messages. And then at the end, we do good luck in that session. So, you can tell me something like, okay, a lot of people do want a promotion at work, something like that. And then we'll send a good luck at the end. So what I'm offering now, it's like 1 hour combined that we can do everything in that hour.
Okay, well, thank you for being here. And thank you for all of the Reiki that you've sent me for so many situations over the last several years. And everybody watching, go follow the Self Care Librarian on all platforms and go check out her sessions that she offers and see also her videos. So you can actually get the Reiki through the videos. So if you scroll through her Instagram or TikTok, you can actually find like what ailment you're thinking about. It could be stress, it could be a toothache, it could be a stomach ache. And those you kind of just get intuitive hits, right? Like it says like make a
Yeah.
video about this. And then you'll get people messaging you after saying like, "Oh my God, this is exactly what I needed today." So if you're not ready to do your one-on-one, you can also get a little hit of Reiki from social media. Thanks for listening to Ultra Minds with JK Ultra, where every Thursday we come out with a new interviewing some of the greatest minds in spirituality, consciousness, aliens, conspiracies, astrology, and so much more. And make sure you check out my Tuesday Night Live every Tuesday night, where I do a live stream and we do a Q&A and we go a deep dive into topics like the simulation theory, shadow work, spiritual bypassing, spiritual gurus turned cult leaders, aliens, my own experiences, and so much more. So make sure you subscribe, put on notifications, and if you would like to support my work, you can also become a subscriber to my Substack, which is $11 a month at jennifercarmody.substack.com. And once a month for our paid subscribers, we do a live event where we do a group hypnosis, a group meditation, or a group manifestation exercise. And thank you so much. Make sure that you subscribe, comment, do all the things, all the YouTube stuff.